My name is Patricia, and I am 30 years old. I was standing outside my mother's bedroom door when I heard her voice clearly through the thin walls. She was talking to my younger sister. Kevin deserves you more than Patricia. She only knows how to work like a machine. She does not know how to keep a husband. That was the night I discovered everything. My blood felt like it turned to ice in my veins. Before we begin this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever thought that your own flesh and blood could be the ones who stab you deepest in the back? Let me take you back to where it all started, because to understand the depth of this betrayal, you need to know the foundation it was built upon. I grew up in a small town in Tennessee. We were a middle-class family. Nothing fancy, nothing too poor. My father worked at a local factory, and my mother Gloria stayed home to raise my sister Brianna and me. Life was simple back then. I remember summer evenings catching fireflies in the backyard, and winter nights gathered around the old fireplace listening to my father tell stories. But everything changed when I was 12 years old. My father died in a car accident on his way home from work one rainy November evening. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and crossed into my father's lane. He was gone instantly. They said he did not suffer, but we did. Oh, how we suffered. After my father passed, my mother Gloria became a different person. The warm, gentle woman I knew transformed into someone bitter, constantly complaining about how unfair life had treated her. She became obsessed with the idea that she was a victim of circumstance, that the world owed her something for taking her husband away. I was the older sister by 3 years. Brianna was only 9 when our father died. I remember holding her hand at the funeral, promising myself I would take care of her, that I would be strong for both of us, since our mother seemed incapable of being strong for anyone. From that point forward, I took on responsibilities no child should have to carry. I cooked meals when my mother could not get out of bed. I helped Brianna with her homework. I cleaned the house, did the laundry, and made sure we got to school on time. I became the invisible backbone of our broken family. But here is the thing about being the responsible one. People stop seeing your needs. They only see what you can do for them. My mother started treating Brianna differently than she treated me. She would say Brianna reminded her of our father, that Brianna had his gentle spirit and needed extra protection. Brianna got new clothes while I wore hand-me-downs. Brianna got the bigger bedroom after I left for college. Brianna got excuses made for every mistake she ever made. Meanwhile, I got criticism. Why are you not more feminine like your sister? Why do you always have your nose in a book? Why can you not be more easygoing? The comparisons never stopped, and they cut deeper each time. I threw myself into my studies because academics was the one place where my worth was measured objectively. I earned a full scholarship to college, which was good, because my mother made it clear she could not afford to help me. She needed to save money for Brianna, she said. Brianna was younger and would need support longer. I worked 2 part-time jobs throughout college to pay for my living expenses, while Brianna 3 years later got money sent to her for clothes, entertainment, and whatever else she wanted. When Brianna dropped out of college after just 1 year, because she decided it was not for her, my mother did not bat an eye. My daughter is sensitive, she told relatives. She needs to find her own path. That path apparently involved trying different jobs and quitting each one within 6 months. Retail sales, marketing assistant, photography model. Nothing stuck because nothing was ever good enough for Brianna, and no one ever held her accountable. By the time I was 25, I had worked my way up to become the head accountant at a major manufacturing company in Nashville. I was making $110,000 a year plus bonuses. I bought my own apartment. I bought my own car. I started investing in the stock market. I was building a life I could be proud of. And every month, like clockwork, I sent money home to my mother and Brianna. Never once did they thank me. Never once did they acknowledge the sacrifice. It was simply expected, as if I owed them something for the crime of being successful while they struggled. I was 25 when I met Kevin Mercer at a business networking conference in Nashville. He was 33 tall with brown hair and a smile that could light up a room. He introduced himself as an independent financial consultant, and he seemed so confident, so put together. Kevin pursued me relentlessly. Flowers delivered to my office. Surprise dinners at restaurants I had mentioned wanting to try. Long phone calls where he actually listened to me talk about my day. No one had ever made me feel so seen, so valued, so wanted. After a year of dating, we got married in a small ceremony. My mother actually said something positive to me for the first time in years. "You finally did something right," she told me at the reception. I should have recognized the backhanded nature of that compliment, but I was too happy to care. What I did not know at the time was that Kevin came into our marriage with nothing. No savings, no property, no real income. His financial consulting business existed mostly in his imagination and on business cards he had printed at a copy shop. But I was blind with love, and I believed in supporting my partner's dreams. That was my first mistake. The first 2 years of our marriage seemed perfect on the surface, like a photograph that looks beautiful until you examine it closely and notice all the cracks. Kevin and I bought a house in a quiet suburb of Nashville. It cost $350,000, and I put down the deposit and paid most of the monthly mortgage because Kevin said he was still building his consulting business. He needed time, he said. He had big clients in the pipeline, he said. Success was just around the corner, he said. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I had spent my whole life being the responsible one, the one who made things work. Supporting my husband while he found his footing felt natural, even noble. Meanwhile, Kevin settled into a comfortable routine of not actually working. He would leave the house in the morning dressed in nice clothes, claiming to have meetings with potential clients. He would come home in the evening tired from a day of what I assumed was hustling and networking. He bought expensive watches and designer shoes, justifying them as necessary for his professional image. I paid for everything: the house, the cars, the insurance, the groceries. Even his business expenses went on credit cards that I ultimately paid off. But I told myself this was temporary. I told myself we were a team, and teams support each other through difficult times. Then Brianna entered our lives in a way I never expected. It was about 18 months ago when my mother called me with that familiar tone of neediness in her voice. Brianna had lost another job. She was struggling to pay rent. Could Patricia help? Could Patricia always help? I suggested that Brianna come stay with us in Nashville for a couple of months while she got back on her feet. I would help her find a job, get her stabilized, and send her on her way. I thought I was being a good sister. I thought I was doing what family does. Brianna moved into our guest bedroom with 2 suitcases and an attitude of entitlement that she wore like perfume. She was 27 years old, but acted like the world owed her everything, and she owed it nothing in return. From the very first week, I noticed things that made me uncomfortable. Brianna started dressing differently when she was around the house. Shorter skirts, lower cut tops, more makeup than necessary for someone who was supposedly job hunting. When I mentioned it casually, she laughed and said she was just trying to feel confident for interviews. Kevin seemed to enjoy having Brianna around. He would sit with her for hours talking about life, giving her advice, being the supportive brother-in-law. I actually felt grateful at first. My husband was helping my sister. Was that not wonderful? Brianna found a job as a receptionist at a spa after about 6 weeks. I helped her find an apartment and paid the security deposit so she could move out on her own. I thought that was the end of that chapter. But Kevin kept in touch with her. He said he wanted to make sure she was adjusting okay, that he felt responsible for her since she was family now. I appreciated his thoughtfulness. I really did. I was too busy with work to check on her myself, so having Kevin do it seemed like a blessing. Looking back, I want to scream at my past self for being so naive. The signs were there. I just refused to see them. Kevin started comparing me to Brianna in subtle ways that I initially dismissed. Brianna always knows how to relax. You should learn from her. Brianna is such a good cook. Maybe she could teach you some recipes since you are always too busy. Brianna really knows how to have fun. When was the last time we just had fun together? Each comment planted a seed of inadequacy in my mind. Instead of questioning why my husband was so focused on my sister, I questioned myself. Was I too focused on work? Was I neglecting my marriage? Was I failing as a wife? I tried harder. I cooked more. I suggested date nights that Kevin always seemed too tired to enjoy. I bought lingerie that stayed in the drawer because Kevin was never in the mood. I blamed myself for the distance growing between us. One evening I found a restaurant receipt in Kevin's jacket pocket while doing laundry. Dinner for two at an upscale Italian place I had never been to. The date was a night Kevin told me he was meeting a potential client out of town. When I asked him about it, he barely blinked. Oh, that must be from one of my employees. He probably left it in my jacket when I gave him a ride. Kevin did not have employees. His entire consulting business was just him. But I accepted the explanation because the alternative was too painful to consider. My mother started calling more frequently around this time, which was unusual. She would ask about Kevin more than she asked about me. How is Kevin doing? Is Kevin working hard? Is Kevin happy? The questions felt strange, but I chalked it up to her finally accepting my husband as part of the family. Kevin is a good man, my mother would say. You need to make sure you keep him happy. Men like that do not come around often. I did not understand why she suddenly cared so much about my marriage. I did not understand a lot of things back then. But I was about to learn everything in one devastating night. The discovery happened on a Friday evening 3 weeks before what I now call the day after. I had finished a major project at work ahead of schedule, and my boss told me to take the rest of the day off. It was only 3 in the afternoon. I decided to surprise my mother with a visit. I had not seen her in months, and some part of me still craved her approval, still hoped that one day she would look at me and say she was proud. I stopped at a bakery and bought her favorite cake. I drove 3 hours from Nashville to her house in Tennessee, imagining how pleased she would be to see me. I even texted Kevin that I would be home late, though he did not respond. When I pulled into my mother's driveway around 6:30, I saw a car I recognized immediately. Kevin's car. My heart did a little skip of surprise. Why was Kevin at my mother's house? He had not mentioned anything about visiting her. I walked up to the front door with the cake in my hands, already composing explanations in my mind. Maybe he wanted to surprise me by visiting my mother. Maybe they were planning something for my upcoming birthday. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent reason. I used the spare key my mother kept hidden under a fake rock and quietly opened the door. I wanted to surprise them both. I stepped into the darkened living room and immediately noticed that all the lights downstairs were off. But there was a glow coming from upstairs, and I could hear muffled voices. I set the cake down on the kitchen counter and crept toward the staircase. The voices were coming from the second floor. One of them was definitely my mother's. She was talking to someone, and her tone had that gossipy quality she always got when she was sharing secrets. I climbed the stairs slowly, my heart starting to pound for reasons I could not explain. When I reached the top, I saw that the door to Brianna's old bedroom was slightly open. A strip of light fell across the hallway carpet. And then I heard my mother's voice clearly. Kevin belongs with you, not Patricia. She only knows how to work like a machine. She does not know how to keep a man happy. I froze. My hand gripped the wooden railing so hard I thought it might splinter. Are you sure he will leave her? That was Brianna's voice, higher pitched, almost whining. Of course he will. He told me himself. He is just waiting for the right time. Once everything is settled, you two can be together properly. I could not breathe. I could not move. I stood there in the hallway listening to my mother and my sister discuss my husband like he was a prize to be won, and I was an obstacle to be removed. I took another step forward and looked through the crack in the door. What I saw destroyed something inside me that I do not think will ever fully heal. Kevin and Brianna were on the bed. His arm was around her. Her head was on his shoulder. They looked comfortable together, intimate in a way that spoke of familiarity and practice. This was not a first time. This was a routine. Kevin was speaking now. Once I file for divorce, we will split everything 50-50. Patricia's savings the house, all of it. Then you and I can start fresh somewhere else. Oh, but what if she fights it? Brianna asked. She will not. Patricia is a pushover. She has been taking care of everyone her whole life. She will probably blame herself and just let me go quietly. My mother laughed. That sounds like Patricia, always the martyr. They laughed together. My mother, my sister, my husband. They laughed at my expense while planning to steal everything I had worked for. I stepped back from the door, my mind racing. My first instinct was to burst in there, to scream, to cry, to demand explanations. But something stopped me. Some cold, calculating part of my brain that had kept me alive through years of being undervalued told me that confrontation right now would only give them time to prepare. I needed to think. I needed to plan. I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went before I made my move. I crept back down the stairs silently. I picked up the cake I had brought and walked out the front door. I got in my car and sat there in the darkness for 10 minutes just breathing. Then I drove around the block and parked where I could see the house, but they could not see me. I waited. At around 9:30, Kevin came out of the house. He kissed Brianna at the door while my mother watched approvingly from behind them. Then he got in his car and drove away, probably heading home to me, probably ready to lie to my face about where he had been. I waited another 30 minutes before walking back to the house. This time I knocked. My mother answered, looking startled to see me. "Patricia, what are you doing here?" "Surprise visit," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I finished work early and thought I would come see you." "Oh, well, come in, come in." Brianna appeared at the top of the stairs, and I watched her face cycle through surprise, fear, and then careful neutrality. "Hey, sis, what brings you here?" "Just missed my family," I said. "Is that so strange?" They exchanged glances that they thought I did not notice. "Kevin was here earlier," my mother said, carefully testing the waters. "He stopped by to drop off some documents I needed for my taxes." "How nice of him," I replied. We sat in the living room making awkward small talk for about an hour. I watched them both, seeing things I had been blind to for months. The way Brianna could not meet my eyes. The way my mother kept steering the conversation toward Kevin's good qualities. The way they both seemed nervous, like criminals who think they might have been caught, but are not sure. Finally, I stood up to leave. "It was good seeing you both. I should get home to Kevin." At the door, my mother grabbed my arm. Her eyes searched my face. "You did not hear anything, did you? When you first arrived." I looked at her. This woman who had given birth to me, who was supposed to love me unconditionally, who had chosen my sister over me my entire life and was now helping steal my husband. "Hear what mother—" She relaxed slightly. "Nothing. Never mind. Drive safe." I drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Kevin was already there when I arrived, sitting on the couch, watching television like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," he said without looking up. "How was your day?" I stood in the doorway and looked at this man I had married, this man I had supported, this man who was plotting to take everything from me while sleeping with my sister. "It was fine," I said. "How was yours?" "Same old. Had some meetings, nothing exciting." I nodded and went to the bedroom. I did not sleep that night. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling Kevin's warmth beside me and wanting to scream. But I did not scream. I planned. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Kevin left the house around 9, supposedly for another day of meetings that we both knew did not exist. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I got to work. First, I called my best friend Simone. We had been close since college, and she worked as a legal assistant at a prominent law firm in Nashville. I told her everything, every detail, every word I had heard. By the time I finished, she was so angry I could practically feel her rage through the phone. "You need a lawyer," Simone said immediately. "A good one. And you need to document everything before Kevin realizes you know." "Do you know someone?" "Warren Blake. He is one of the best divorce attorneys in Tennessee." I will call him right now and get you an appointment today." While Simone made calls, I sat down at my computer and began doing what I do best: numbers, documentation, evidence. I logged into all our joint accounts and started pulling statements. What I found made my stomach turn. Over the past 6 months, Kevin had been slowly draining our joint savings account. $25,000 had been transferred to an account I did not recognize. Our joint checking account that used to hold a comfortable cushion now barely had enough to cover next month's bills. I checked the credit card statements next. Kevin's card, which I paid off every month, showed over $40,000 in charges. Restaurants, hotels, jewelry stores, clothing boutiques. Many of the hotel charges were in Nashville on nights when Kevin told me he was out of town. I photographed everything. Screenshots of every statement, every transaction, every lie documented in digital ink. I saved copies to my personal cloud storage to a USB drive and to an email I sent to myself. Then I dug deeper into Kevin's so-called consulting business. I searched public records for any business license under his name. Nothing. I searched for any client testimonials or reviews. Nothing. I searched for any evidence that Kevin Mercer Financial Consulting had ever done a single hour of legitimate work. Nothing. In 3 years of marriage, my husband had contributed exactly $0 to our household. Every single expense had been paid by me. The house, the cars, the insurance, the utilities, the groceries, even the expensive suits Kevin wore to his imaginary meetings. I had been supporting a con artist. At 2 p.m, I met with Warren Blake at his office downtown. He was about 50 years old with gray hair and sharp eyes that had clearly seen every kind of marital disaster imaginable. Simone had briefed him on the basics, but he wanted to hear everything directly from me. I told him, all of it. The affair with my sister, my mother's encouragement, the financial drain, the plan I had overheard. Warren listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Whose name is on the house?" "Both of ours, but I paid the down payment and I pay 90% of the mortgage." "Do you have documentation?" "Every bank transfer, every mortgage payment, every receipt." Warren nodded slowly. "And the cars?" "My car is in my name alone. I bought it before we got married. Kevin's car is technically in both our names, but again, I made every payment." "Investment accounts?" "All in my name, funded entirely by my salary." Warren was quiet for a moment, reviewing the documents I had brought. Then he looked up at me with something like admiration. "Mrs. Mercer, your husband is going to leave this marriage with nothing but debt. You have done an exceptional job protecting yourself financially, even if you did not realize it at the time." "What about the money he took from our joint accounts?" "We will pursue that. Given the evidence of his deception and lack of contribution, any reasonable judge will order him to repay those funds." Warren prepared divorce papers that afternoon. He also suggested I look into Kevin's background more thoroughly. "Men like this rarely start with their first victim," he said. "If we can establish a pattern of behavior, it strengthens your case significantly." I took his advice and hired a private investigator that Simone recommended. Within 48 hours, he had uncovered information that made everything worse and better at the same time. Kevin had been married before, 7 years ago in Florida, to a woman named Denise. The marriage lasted 2 years before Denise filed for divorce, citing fraud and financial exploitation. Kevin had apparently done the exact same thing to her. He swept her off her feet, moved into her life, drained her accounts, and disappeared with $60,000 of her money. The investigator found an old forum post where Denise had tried to warn other women about Kevin. The post had been taken down probably after legal threats from Kevin, but cached copies still existed. I contacted Denise through social media. She called me back within an hour. "I cannot believe he is still doing this," she said, her voice thick with old anger. "I tried to warn people, but he threatened to sue me for defamation." "Tell me everything." She did. For over an hour, Denise described a relationship that sounded exactly like mine. The charm, the promises, the gradual financial takeover, the discovery that he had been cheating the entire time. He targets successful women, Denise said. Women who are used to working hard and taking care of others. Women who want to believe in love so badly that they ignore the red flags. That is exactly what he did to me. I am so sorry. I wish I could have warned you somehow. You tried. And now I am going to make sure he never does this to anyone else. When I hung up with Denise, I had a complete picture of the man I had married. Kevin Mercer was not a failed entrepreneur who needed support. He was a professional con artist who preyed on hardworking women and left them with nothing. But here is the thing my mother and sister did not understand. They thought Kevin was wealthy. They saw the nice clothes, the expensive car, the beautiful house, and assumed he had brought money into our marriage. They never bothered to ask where any of it actually came from. They were about to find out. That evening my mother called. Her voice was cheerful, almost excited. Patricia, dear, I want to have a little family gathering tomorrow. Sunday lunch at my house. Nothing fancy, just close family. What is the occasion? She hesitated for just a second. Well, we have some news to share. Good news. I think it is time we all sat down together and talked about the future. I knew exactly what this gathering was for. My mother was going to announce Kevin and Brianna's relationship officially. She was going to pressure me into accepting it gracefully, probably with a room full of relatives there to make me look unreasonable if I objected. That sounds lovely, Mother. I will be there. Wonderful. And Patricia, try to keep an open mind, okay? Sometimes things happen for a reason. I wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, I said, I will bring a surprise. After hanging up, I spent the rest of the evening preparing. I printed documents. I organized evidence. I rehearsed what I would say. I thought about every relative who might be there and how they would react. My phone buzzed with a text from Simone. Are you sure about this? Public confrontation can get messy. I typed back. They plan to humiliate me publicly by announcing their affair in front of family. I am just returning the favor with some additional information they seem to have overlooked. You are scary when you are angry, Simone wrote back. I love it. Do you want me there for backup? Yes, please. That night, for the first time since discovering the affair, I slept peacefully. Not because I was happy, because I was ready. I woke up Sunday morning with a clarity I had not felt in years. Today was the day everything changed. I took my time getting ready. I chose a black dress, simple and elegant, the color of power, the color of endings. I did my makeup carefully, tied my hair back in a neat bun, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was not the Patricia who had spent her whole life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. She was not the Patricia who ignored red flags because she wanted to believe in fairy tales. She was not the Patricia who accepted crumbs of affection and pretended they were feasts. This Patricia was done pretending. Simone picked me up at noon. She squeezed my hand as I got in the car. You have got this, she said. Whatever happens today, remember that you are not wrong. They are. We drove to my mother's house in Tennessee. When we arrived, I counted the cars in the driveway and along the street. Kevin's car, Brianna's car, Aunt Emma's car, Uncle Robert's truck, and an old sedan I recognized as belonging to my grandmother Martha. My mother had assembled an audience just as I expected. Aunt Emma was my mother's younger sister, always ready to side with Gloria on everything. Uncle Robert was a cousin who had known Kevin socially and seemed to like him. And Grandmother Martha, my father's mother, was the only person in my family who had ever truly been fair to me. I grabbed my bag heavy with documents and walked to the front door with Simone beside me. My mother answered almost immediately. Her smile was too bright, too rehearsed. Patricia, you came. And you brought a friend. This is Simone. I hope you do not mind. Of course not. The more the merrier. We walked into the living room, where everyone was already gathered. Kevin sat on the love seat with Brianna beside him. They were not touching, but they sat too close together for it to be casual. My aunt and uncle were on the main couch. Grandmother Martha sat in my father's old armchair in the corner, watching everything with sharp eyes. Patricia. Kevin stood up with a performance of concern on his face. I am glad you came. We have a lot to talk about. Yes, I said pleasantly. We certainly do. My mother gestured for everyone to sit. Food was laid out on the dining table behind us, but no one seemed interested in eating. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Well, my mother began, taking center stage as she always did. I called everyone here today because our family is going through some changes. Changes that might be difficult to accept at first, but I believe are for the best. Aunt Emma nodded supportively. Uncle Robert looked uncomfortable. Grandmother Martha said nothing, just watched. Kevin and Brianna have fallen in love, my mother announced as if she was sharing wonderful news. These things happen. Hearts cannot be controlled. And rather than let this tear our family apart, I think we should embrace it. She looked at me with eyes that dared me to make a scene. Patricia, I know this is hard, but Kevin and Brianna are meant to be together. Surely you can see that. You two were never really compatible anyway. You are always working, always focused on your career. Kevin needs someone who can give him the attention he deserves. Aunt Emma chimed in right on cue. Your mother is right, dear. Sometimes people grow apart. It is not anyone's fault. Kevin and Brianna have something special, and we should not stand in the way of true love. Uncle Robert added, Kevin is a good man. He has always treated everyone well. I am sure he did not mean to hurt you. They had rehearsed this. All of them. They had planned exactly what they would say to make me feel like the unreasonable one, the obstacle to everyone's happiness. I looked at Kevin, who had the decency to at least pretend to be uncomfortable. Then I looked at Brianna, who was examining her fingernails like this whole thing was boring. Are you finished? I asked quietly. My mother blinked. Yes. We just want you to understand that this is best for everyone. Interesting, I said. Because I also have some information to share. May I? Before anyone could respond, I stood up and walked to the center of the room. I opened my bag and pulled out the first stack of documents. First, let me address the assumption that seems to be driving this entire situation. You all think Kevin is a successful financial consultant, a man with money, a man who can provide for Brianna better than I apparently appreciated him. My mother and Brianna exchanged nervous glances. Kevin has no business, I said, holding up printed records. No business license exists in his name in any state. No clients, no income. In the 3 years we have been married, Kevin has earned exactly $0. I let that sink in for a moment. Every expense in our marriage has been paid by me. The house I paid the down payment and 90% of the mortgage. The cars I made every payment. Insurance, utilities, groceries, all me. Even the expensive clothes Kevin wears to his imaginary meetings come from my credit card. Kevin jumped up. That is not true. I have clients. I have been building something. Really? I pulled out bank statements. Then explain these withdrawals from our joint account. $25,000 transferred to an account I do not have access to. Where did that money go, Kevin? His face went pale. I continued. And let us talk about the credit cards. I held up the statements. $40,000 in charges. Hotels in Nashville on nights you told me you were traveling. Jewelry I never received. Expensive dinners I was never invited to. I looked directly at Brianna. That necklace you are wearing, the diamond one, I recognize it from a charge on Kevin's card 3 months ago. $2,800. He told me it was for a client gift. Brianna's hand flew to her throat, touching the necklace like it had suddenly become poisonous. But wait, I said, reaching into my bag again. There is more. Kevin was married before, in Florida, to a woman named Denise. The room went completely silent. He did the same thing to her, charmed his way into her life, lived off her income, drained her accounts, left her with $60,000 in debt. I held up printed copies of Denise's Forum Post and public court records. Kevin Mercer is not a businessman. He is a professional con artist who targets successful women and bleeds them dry. My mother's face had gone from confident to horrified. Brianna looked like she might be sick. So let me understand this correctly, I said, my voice cold and steady. You encouraged my sister to steal my husband because you thought he was wealthy. You planned to push me aside so Brianna could have my nice life. But here's the thing you never bothered to verify. The nice life, that is my life. I built it. I paid for it. And Kevin gets none of it. I pulled out the final document. The divorce papers already signed by me. This is my divorce filing. I am keeping the house because I paid for it, and I have documentation of every single payment. I am keeping my car, my investments, and every asset I brought into this marriage. Kevin will leave with nothing except the debt he accumulated on cards in his name. I set the papers on the coffee table in front of Kevin. Sign them. Kevin looked at the papers, then at my mother, then at Brianna, searching for someone to help him. No one moved. You cannot do this, he said weakly. I have rights. I will fight this. With what money? I asked. With what lawyer? You have nothing, Kevin. You never had anything. You just had me, and now you do not even have that. I turned to my grandmother, who had been watching everything without saying a word. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. Grandma, I wanted you to know that you are the only person in this room I trust. You are the only one who ever treated me fairly. Grandmother Martha stood up slowly and walked over to me. She took my face in her wrinkled hands. I always knew you were the strong one, she said. Your father would be so proud. Then she turned to her daughter-in-law, my mother Gloria. I warned you, she said quietly. I told you that your favoritism would destroy this family. Now look at what you have done. My mother started crying. Crocodile tears, probably. I did not know. How could I have known? You could have asked, I said. You could have talked to me instead of planning behind my back. You could have been my mother instead of my sister's accomplice. I looked at Brianna one last time. Congratulations on your new relationship. I hope you enjoy whatever Kevin can offer you, which appears to be Lie's debt and absolutely nothing else. Then I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Simone followed. Patricia, wait. My mother grabbed my arm. We need to talk. We can fix this. I removed her hand gently but firmly. There is nothing to fix, Mother. You chose Brianna over me my entire life. This was just the final proof. I am done trying to earn love that should have been given freely. I walked out of that house and did not look back. The weeks following that confrontation were some of the most satisfying of my life, though I will not pretend they were easy. Kevin signed the divorce papers 3 days after the family gathering. Warren told me that Kevin's initial response was to threaten a legal fight, but once he realized he had no resources and no case, he folded completely. The divorce was finalized in 2 months, one of the fastest uncontested divorces in Tennessee history, according to Warren. I kept the house. I kept my car. I kept my investments. The court ordered Kevin to repay the $25,000 he had taken from our joint account, though collecting it was another matter entirely. At least his debt was now official and documented. Kevin's world collapsed piece by piece. Without my income supporting him, he could not afford his lifestyle. He tried staying with friends, but word about the divorce had spread, and most people wanted nothing to do with him. His reputation as a con artist followed him through Nashville's business community like a bad smell. The police opened a file on Kevin based on my formal complaint and the evidence I provided. Combined with Denise's previous allegations, they were building a case. Warren told me it would take time, but Kevin might actually face criminal charges for fraud. Brianna's life imploded almost as quickly. She had been counting on Kevin's supposed wealth to lift her out of her perpetual state of just getting by. Instead, she discovered that the man she had betrayed her sister for had literally nothing to offer. She tried moving Kevin into her small apartment, but he could not contribute to rent. He could not buy groceries. He could not even pay for his own phone bill. Within 3 weeks, she kicked him out. I heard through Grandmother Martha that Brianna called our mother sobbing about how she had ruined her life for nothing. Mother Gloria, for once, had no comforting words. She was too busy dealing with her own guilt, or at least the appearance of guilt, as relatives called, to express their shock at what she had done. Aunt Emma, who had been so quick to take my mother's side at the gathering, stopped returning Gloria's calls. Uncle Robert told mutual relatives that he had no idea what was really going on and felt terrible about his comments. The family that had been so eager to push me aside now could not distance themselves fast enough from the scandal. Kevin eventually left Nashville entirely. Last I heard, he had moved to another state, probably looking for his next victim. I sent Denise a message warning her that Kevin was on the move again. She shared the information with an online support group for women who had been financially exploited by romantic partners. The divorce finalized. I changed the locks on my house, updated all my accounts to remove any trace of Kevin, and finally felt like I could breathe. But the hardest part was not the divorce. The hardest part was dealing with my mother and sister. They both called relentlessly for weeks. My mother left voicemails ranging from tearful apologies to angry accusations that I had overreacted. Brianna sent texts claiming she never meant to hurt me, that Kevin had manipulated her, that she was a victim too. I did not respond to any of it. Setting boundaries with family is one of the most painful things a person can do. Every instinct tells you to forgive, to reconnect, to maintain the bond you have had since birth. But some wounds are too deep. Some betrayals are too fundamental. My mother and sister did not make a mistake. They made a calculated decision to take what was mine because they thought they could get away with it. They only regretted it when the consequences became clear. That is not remorse. That is damage control. So I maintained my silence. I blocked their numbers. I removed them from my social media. I created the distance I needed to heal. The one family member I stayed in touch with was Grandmother Martha. She called me every Sunday just to talk, just to check in. She never pressured me to reconcile with my mother or sister. She simply loved me without conditions, the way family is supposed to. "You did the right thing," she told me one Sunday about 2 months after everything happened. "I know it does not feel like it. I know it hurts. But standing up for yourself was the right thing. I just wish it had not come to this." "So do I, sweetheart. So do I." It has been a year now since that Sunday gathering at my mother's house. A year since I exposed Kevin for who he really was. A year since I walked away from the family that had never truly valued me. I will not lie and say the healing process was easy. For months after the divorce, I struggled with trust. I questioned my own judgment. How had I been so blind to Kevin's true nature? How had I let my mother and sister manipulate me for so long? I started seeing a therapist, something I probably should have done years ago. She helped me understand that the favoritism I experienced growing up was not normal. The way my mother treated me was a form of emotional neglect that left scars I had never properly acknowledged. "You spent your childhood trying to earn love that should have been given freely," my therapist said. "No wonder you were vulnerable to someone like Kevin. You were trained from a young age to accept crumbs and call them a feast." Understanding the pattern helped me break it. I threw myself into building a life that was truly my own. At work, I was promoted to Chief Financial Officer 6 months after the divorce. My salary increased to $160,000 a year. I was now making decisions that affected the entire company, and I was good at it. I adopted a dog from the local shelter. A golden retriever named Maple, who greeted me at the door every evening with more joy than any human had ever shown me. Coming home to her unconditional love was healing in ways I did not expect. Simone and I grew even closer. She was the sister I chose, the family I built for myself. We had dinner together every Thursday, watched movies on lazy weekends, and supported each other through everything life threw our way. I also stayed in touch with Denise, Kevin's first wife. What started as a practical connection became a genuine friendship. She understood my experience in a way few others could. We talked on the phone every few weeks, sharing updates, offering encouragement, reminding each other that we had survived. Together, Denise and I started contributing to online forums where women shared their experiences with financial exploitation in relationships. We warned others about the red flags we had missed. We answered questions from women who were just beginning to suspect their partners were not who they claimed to be. It felt good to turn our pain into something useful. 8 months after the divorce, my grandmother called with unexpected news. My mother had reached out to her asking Martha to help arrange a reconciliation with me. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her that was your decision to make, not mine. And I told her that if she truly wanted forgiveness, she needed to do more than say sorry. She needed to understand why what she did was wrong." "Do you think she understands?" Grandmother Martha was quiet for a moment. "I think Gloria understands that there are consequences. I am not sure she understands the difference between that and genuine remorse." I appreciated her honesty. I did not reach out to my mother. I was not ready, and I was not sure I would ever be. But I stopped being angry. Anger takes energy, and I had better things to spend mine on. Brianna was a different matter. Through Grandmother Martha, I learned that Brianna had finally started taking responsibility for her own life. She had kept her job at the spa, gotten a promotion to assistant manager, and was paying her own bills for the first time in her adult life. "She talks about you sometimes," Grandmother Martha told me. "She says she did not realize how much she took you for granted until you were gone." Maybe that was true, or maybe it was just another manipulation. I chose not to find out. Some relationships are better left in the past. As for Kevin, the police investigation moved slowly but steadily. Warren kept me updated when there were developments. Multiple women had come forward after hearing about my case, sharing similar stories of being charmed and then defrauded. The authorities were building a pattern that might lead to actual criminal charges. I hope so. Not for revenge, but for justice. And to protect the next woman Kevin might target. But the most important thing I learned this past year was not about Kevin or my mother or my sister. It was about me. I learned that I am stronger than I ever knew. I learned that I do not need anyone else's approval to know my own worth. I learned that family is not just blood, it is the people who show up for you, who support you, who love you without conditions. I learned that walking away from toxicity is not giving up. It is choosing yourself. And choosing yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. So here I am, 1 year later, 31 years old, single by choice, successful in my career, surrounded by people who genuinely care about me, living in a house I own outright, paid for with my own hard work, and happy. Actually, genuinely happy. If you are watching this story and you recognize parts of it in your own life, I want you to know something. It gets better. Not immediately, not easily, but it does get better. You deserve to be loved without conditions. You deserve to be appreciated for who you are, not what you can provide. You deserve family that protects you, not betrays you. And if the people who should love you are the ones hurting you, you have every right to walk away. Blood does not give anyone the right to mistreat you. Choose yourself. Protect yourself. Build a life that is truly your own. That is what I did. And I have never been more at peace. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? Have you ever had to walk away from someone who should have loved you but did not? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this one. And if you want to see more content about real-life experiences, survival, and standing up for yourself, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for being part of this community. I hope this story gives you strength no matter what challenges you are facing in your own life. Take care of yourself. You are worth it.